Today in Capechi's Corner, we're going to have some extra proof practice in our deductive reasoning chapter. In our first proof, our given information is angle 2 is congruent to angle 3, and we're trying to prove that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. Now I have my given statement written. There's not really too much else I can do with that, so now I have to go look at my diagram to see if there's anything I can do from there. From there, I notice I have some vertical angles. Angle 1 and 2 are vertical angles, and angle 3 and 4 are vertical angles, and we know that vertical angles are congruent. So that's going to be my next step. So I have angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, and I have angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. And because it's going to be the same reason, I can put them all in one step. So I'm going to say vertical angles are congruent because that's a theorem. And now from here, I can actually do a little bit of substitution to get where I want to go. So I know that 2 is congruent to 3, and I also know that 1 is congruent to 2. So I can almost slide 1 on top of 2 in a way. So if I were to take 1, I know that's the same as 2. If I put that on top, that's going to give me angle 1 is congruent to, and I can do the same thing with angle 3. I know angle 3 is also congruent to angle 4, so I can substitute it there. So that kind of goes on top of there. And if you notice, that's what I'm trying to prove. So my reason here is going to be substitution. A little bit different form of substitution than we've had in the past, but at the same time, we have a few congruency statements, and we can substitute to get where we want to go. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. Now, in step number 2, where I had the two vertical angles are congruent, if you wanted to separate that into two different steps, that would be fine. But again, since the reasoning is the same, we can combine them in one step if we want. In our next proof, our given information is measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 4, and we're trying to prove that the measure of angle 2 is equal to the measure of angle 3. So I have my given statement written. I can't really do too much else with that, so I'm going to take a look at my diagram. And I notice that I actually have two sets of straight angles, 1 and 2 together, and then 3 and 4 are together. So what I want to do there is I can say that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to 180, and the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4 is also equal to 180. And the reason for that is angle addition postulate. Now remember, there's two different things we can do with angle addition postulate. Either two small angles equal a big angle, or in this case, because there's a straight angle, I know when I add the measures of 1 and 2 together, I'll get 180, and the same thing with 3 and 4. Now, because in step 2 they're both equal to 180, both of those statements, I can set the other part equal to each other. So I can say the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4, and that would be because of substitution. Since they're both equal to 180, I can substitute and they are equal to each other. Now, with that being said, if I go back to my original given, I have 1 and 4 are equal, and I'm trying to prove that 2 and 3 are equal. So if I subtract out 1 and 4, then I'm going to have my final statement there, which is the measure of angle 2 is equal to the measure of angle 3, and that's going to be subtraction. Now that this proof is complete and we got ourselves to the proof statement, when I take a look back, everything is accurate. The only thing I don't like is I don't like where that given statement. I think it would flow a little bit better if I had it down here between 3 and 4. Now, in most proofs we start with given, but in this case I think that number 1, the given statement, would flow better if it was between steps 3 and 4. So we're going to rewrite it. Now I've rewritten this proof so that the given statement falls later in the proof in step number 3. So let's go through it again. In step number 1, the first thing I did was I used angle addition by stating that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to 180, and the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4 is also 180. In step number 2, I used substitution because both sentences were equal to 180. I set them equal to each other. in step number 3. Now here is where my given is, and I'm going to move it down there so that I can get to step number 4 a little easier. I said 1 is equal to 4, so if I look back at step number 2, if I simplify that and cross off step 1 and 4 as if I'm subtracting, I would be left with measure of angle 2 on the left-hand side is equal to the measure of angle 3 through subtraction.